Welcome to the Sports MVT Insider, a platform that is unrelenting in our coverage of women in sport, and we celebrate the small and the big achievements of our ladies across all sporting codes. But today we focus on the sport of basketball. Yes, the 2021 NBA champions are the Milwaukee Bucks, and I'm certain basketball fans have really enjoyed the season thus far, and we've seen some amazing basketball on display at the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games. But today we talk to one of our very own. Now, she's a former player and she's done at least everything across all the categories that you can put her in terms of the world of basketball. She's been a coach, she's been a player, she's been an assistant coach, and she's most certainly a phenomenal individual when we talk about the world of basketball. Her name is Nompumelelo Ramatsoga. Nompumelelo, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Sports MVT Insider. Let's start here. We talk about the world of basketball, and I think for many South Africans, it's a sport that we know, but we don't know too well. I would love to get into your journey a little bit. How did you fall in love with the sport of basketball? And tell us about your journey thus far.
It started very early for me. I started going to St. Mary's DSG in grade 5. And as I arrived there that year, they started a basketball program because another really phenomenal woman in the sport, Mrs. Susan de Bruin, arrived the same year as the head of sport. And so she developed a basketball program, and it was love at first sight. I have loved it since, and I just haven't looked back. You know, I've spent many years playing, many years as a coach. But yeah, I played all through high school. Spent 2 years playing in the States at a junior college, came back, played at the University of Pretoria. I spent some time playing with the Limpopo senior women's team. As a junior, I actually played for Gauteng, but as a senior, I kind of switched allegiances a little bit and sent it back home. So played with Limpopo for a bit, but yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Let's talk a little bit about being an assistant coach. And I mean, you've coached at a varsity level and you've coached both males and females. What is the difference between the two genders?
I think that the approach is sometimes different. You know, the fact is men's basketball in this country is more competitive. So the work ethic seems to be a little bit different. And you have a lot of women, even in the varsity space, coming into basketball only in university. So I think the way you approach teaching is very different at those levels and for those two genders.
All right. Now, you studied a BCom, a business management qualification, and you've now also switched over somewhat to the world of psychology. What inspired this change?
So I think I've always been fascinated by psychology, and I've always really taken a keen interest to it. I will say, though, you know, working in sport has driven me more towards psychology. I think that you can't ignore right now how big the conversation around mental health and psychology is in the sporting world. And so on my journey in basketball, I kind of decided at some point that I wanted to pursue psychology. So right now I'm doing my internship to finish off my master's degree. But it is something I'm very passionate about and to hopefully one day go into sports psychology.
Absolutely beautiful. I would love for us to touch a little bit on sports psychology as well. I mean, that's a term that we can't ignore in the world of sports today. We have seen the stories about Naomi Osaka. We've seen the stories now at the Olympic Games with Simone Biles. How important is mental health for athletes? Because I think sometimes we inspire them and we tell them to be harder and tougher, and the mental health aspect is something that's simply forgotten.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in my generation of athletes, it was about just, you know, going through it. You were told to eat a cup of cement or to toughen up and things like that. So I think now with the younger generation of athletes just bringing to the fore that as much as they're athletes, they're also human beings, and just allowing there to be room to discuss mental health and to address athletes' mental health. I think previously mental health was seen as this weakness and this bad word, you know, that we didn't really touch on. It wasn't something athletes were supposed to have or deal with. And so I think we're going to see athletes actually be more successful as we embrace the conversation around mental health and about really taking care of athletes as human beings.
Absolutely beautiful. Now, I would love to talk about the formation of the South African Women's Basketball Association. How did that come about? And of course, in a country like South Africa, with a growing sport like basketball, how important is this association?
Yeah, for us, it was born out of frustration. I think we had watched a decline in women's basketball over the last couple of years, and we all got together as a bunch of women who've really benefited from having been basketball players and having been athletes, where basketball's created so many opportunities for so many of us. And we decided that it was time for us to really form a place and a space for the next generation of female basketball players to be able to really benefit from the sport and to have opportunities and safe spaces for them.
Now, you're currently the chairperson of this association, and I'm certain you deal with many frustrations, as you've just mentioned. What are some of your responsibilities and also some of the challenges that you guys are currently facing at the moment?
So, for me, we have a lot of different subcommittees, and the one I sit on day to day is the Strategy and Finance Committee. And I think my role is really to kind of help develop the overall strategy that we have for the ship that we've started to sail. And so, yeah, my responsibility is really that, developing broader strategies, and really just trying to gain momentum for women's basketball and trying to make sure our programs get off the ground. It's obviously been difficult to do any physical programs with COVID and everything that's happened, but we are getting moving, which is fantastic. And I think it is an important vehicle. I think that this association is filled with women, like I've said, who've benefited from basketball and women who've really gone on to create incredible careers. I think our team is absolutely incredible, and the dedication that each person on our board shows to it is how we've been able to grow SAWBA in such a short time.
That's amazing. I would love to talk about the transition from being a player to being a coach. I mean, for you, how did that come about? Because I think we often hear the statement that you need to be a player in order for you to be a great coach. Is that true?
I mean, I'd like to think I was great at both, but I think that I've always been a coach. My mind for the game has definitely always been better than what I've been able to do on the court. And it's strange because even when I was playing, my coaches almost addressed me like a coach. I started coaching when I was really young. I started coaching at 18. So right out of high school, I spent a lot of time coaching, and I've always coached from then. So even when I was playing at junior college, I was coaching a regional NJB like under 10 team. And when I came back and went to Tux, I coached the second team at Tux. I coached high school basketball. So coaching's really been the thing that's always been in my blood. I think I had to play to get there. But yeah, it was an easy transition for me. And actually coaching probably made me a better player in my approach to the game as well.
Oh, that's good to hear. Let's talk a little bit about the broader picture in terms of South African basketball. What are some of the major challenges that we are facing at this point in time? And also, how can we grow the sport in the country and also on the African continent?
Yeah, I think when you speak of the African continent, we are quite far behind. If you look at the programs that run in other countries, you look at what other countries have been able to achieve, I think we are a step behind. And I think our biggest challenge right now is just we haven't really had a very successful functioning administration. This year is an election year for Basketball South Africa, and I think what happens over the next month with those elections coming up is going to be very important to try and get leadership that really wants to grow the sport. I think we love to focus on the glamorous things, but I think sports development is really where we have to focus if we're going to grow. I think lots of countries have built themselves back up that way, starting at juniors and really making sure the junior programs are sustainable and long term.
You're locked onto the Sport MVT Insider, a podcast for unrelenting coverage of women in sport. I absolutely love diving deeper into the journeys of our athletes, coaches, and administrators to get to know them a little bit better than we do. Coming up this Wednesday is an interesting round of quick fire questions, a great opportunity for some good laughs and some great banter. Keep it locked onto Sport MVT, where we celebrate our women in sport.